Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Movie Review, Episode 63. This is reviewing the sixth Star Trek film ever released. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Released in 1991. That's it right there. Now, those of you curious though, what famous sci-fi film was released this very year? Why, it was the film that's considered to be one of the most famous, it's considered to be one of the best sequels of all time, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Film was directed by Nicholas Meyer, director of the second film of the series, Wrath of Khan. Now, I've heard a story that the reason why he was brought back to this sequel was because Larry Nimoy requested it, who became producer of this film. And it's a story involving him, another story involving him in this particular film itself. This film is not very long. It's actually considered to be, of the original 6 films, the third longest. Yes, the third longest. Yes, the longest is the original film, which was the longest of the original 10 films. The second longest is Voyage Home. This is the third longest, at an hour and 53 minutes. Yes. Taking place just a few years after the events of Final Frontier, where they actually got Spock's character right this time, instead of him being like, well, suffering from problems he had from the last film. The Enterprise A is actually working properly. And you see a little bit more of the ship in this film. I'm like, wow. Now, those of you curious though, is there any books or taking place between Final Frontier and this film? Yes. Not many. You have the 10-part New Earth series, where the Enterprise leads a group of colony ships to start a new colony, and of course the series gets taken on a final book by the Challenge, which opened the Gateway series. Yeah. And there's also a book I have reviewed on here. I think it's called Face of Fear, which is a loose follow-up to Conscience of a King. That one revealed that the sick bay of the ship, which pretty much the same design as, kind of like the way it looked probably in the films per se, even though they made very rare appearances. Yeah, but this time it actually has a door. Yes, an actual sliding door. Which I'm thinking though, okay, you have a doctor's office and a sick bay and there's no door. Believe it or not, Dr. Crush's office doesn't have a freaking door. Which I'm like, that's odd. And yet, here's the thing. She has a freaking, her office is glass. Yes, that's not a joke about Dr. Crusher's office on Enterprise D. It's glass. In the case of the sick bay in this film, you see it briefly in one scene, but it's really to apply to the film. We do get a chance to see the bridge, the original Enterprise A bridge. This is, of course, the last film we see it in. And it's a pretty good looking bridge. I like it. It's really good. And the stuff related to the bridge, I will get to in a minute. We all see a room that has never been shown in this series before. We have sort of like the officer's lounge, where you have a table that's kind of basically shaped like a L in a way, where it's basically, I mean, this loosely involves the plot, but very minor at best. It shows up for a really good scene, probably one of the best scenes of the whole film, and also references the title of the film, The Undiscovered Country. It pops up roughly 2 more times in cameo appearances. One involving 2 guys just sitting at a table for some reason while hearing something on the intercom. The second one actually involving toward the end of the film, where something happens toward this particular room. Yeah. Engineering itself, as far as I can tell, I think does make an appearance in this film. But they do something that has never been really shown in the series before. The 2 for photon torpedo, they've never really shown this before at all in the films. Not even in this. Of course, in the case of this particular movies, the torpedoes themselves, I should point out though, were a frequent thing they used on the original series. They love using the torpedoes a lot. Never much used the phasers. Yeah, that's something quite weird though, because if you notice in Next Generation, a lot of the other shows, they love using the ship phasers a lot. Very rarely they use torpedoes. In the case of this film, frequent use of torpedoes. A lot. Yes, like a boatload. And there's stuff related to another ship we'll get to in a minute. Yeah, the movie starts off, quite shockingly, with the destruction of a moon. What movie is this? Freaking Praxis. Though this particular explosion is referenced in another film, mind you. Creates this gigantic shockwave. Oh, and they revealed what the explanation for this was, where it was overmining and insufficient safety measures. This is what caused an explosion of a moon. Okay. It's a weird line. We also, and pretty much after that, of course, this is also, we see Sulu in the captain's chair for the first time. As far as I can tell, they never really teased this before this. Like they kind of hinted at this in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, he's hoping for the Excelsior. Though I should point out, in the Search for Spock light novel, in the Search for Spock adaptation, there's a line of this making in the film where Sulu, I think from what the book describes it, he was actually supposed to get the ship and not go to the guy with the big ego. Yeah, take that for taking the ship that's supposed to be mine. Though of course he would later serve under him as his first officer in the book Forged Fire, which would the guy would later die, and Sulu automatically becomes the captain. This also has appearance with a Klingon ambassador who does appear in this film. Yeah, making his second appearance ever in live action. This particular Klingon ambassador. Oh yeah, and there's Next Generation actor in here, and I will get to him in a minute. Yeah, so Sulu basically acted like a pretty rational captain. He's also the first captain that I can think of in Star Trek who actually doesn't drink coffee on the bridge. No, he's actually the first captain to drink tea on the bridge. Wow, that's quite something. Yeah, and of course I think he takes maybe 2 sips of tea before this thing breaks because of the shockwaves, and he tells them to raise shields, and of course tells them to ride the wave. And of course we get brief contact from the contact Praxis, if transmissions like some kind of shaking, and of course they cut away to a guy who will appear in a later scene where he says there's been incident and it contains whatever, stay out of neutral zone, whatever, and one of the officers are like, are we gonna report this? And he's like, are you kidding? He's like, I'm sure that basically everyone was like, are you kidding? Of course we're gonna report it. And then it cuts to 3 months later. Yes, it's implied that actually it was more 1 month later. Actually, it's about 3 months. Yeah, it's something in the Star Trek films. They never had a time jump in the films at all prior to this. Yeah, it's particularly very weird. Yeah, and apparently the crew is retiring. Now, I should point out, though, about this, that originally this is supposed to be a prequel film, and the original cast turned it down because they didn't want to do prequel stuff. Though they would do this for the 11th film release, the 2009 reboot film. Yeah, so they had this thing where this is their final voyage, and this is probably going to be their last mission they can do before they're going to retire. And I'll get to what happens to the ship in a minute. I'll get to what the end of the review happens to the ship. So, they meet in this room. A room that this is by far his first and only appearance in the history of Star Trek. This big room, which has the entire senior staff, minus Sulu and Spock, though Spock shows up in a minute, and a bunch of admirals. Yes, and apparently this meeting was deemed classified for some reason. And we have the CNC, the Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet, is this one guy who apparently, and Cartwright appears in the scene, but he's not the CNC. No, it's somebody else. I thought he was. It was implied he was in Star Trek 4, and this film, apparently he got removed for some reason. At least they brought back the actor for the film. Yeah. So, they mentioned what happened beginning the film, and of course mentioned about Gorkin. Yeah, a character who had never appeared prior to this. As a matter of fact, the Klingon Council was never mentioned at all, because they never really delved into Klingon politics. And of course the whole thing about peace, stuff like that. Now there is a reason why that they did this for this particular film, because the Berlin Wall came down the same year. That was simply the reason for that. And fun fact, my parents actually took me to Berlin at the same time. This was not long after the Berlin Wall came down. That when I was visiting my uncle who was in the Air Force, stationed in Germany, and when I was 2 years old, apparently playing duck hunting. I don't particularly remember. This is what my parents tell me. And those who know what duck hunting is, It's a video game for the NES. I'm not kidding. Yeah, this was technically my first video game I've ever played. Yeah. And believe it or not, we actually own a piece of the Berlin Wall. I'm not going to show it because I don't know where it is, but we kept it like in a particular glass jar. I think it was glass vase we kept in. But this particular piece is a piece of the Berlin Wall. Yes, my parents actually brought this over with them when we came home from Germany. This is back in 1991, the same year this film came out. Yep. So we meet Gorkin, and quite imposing figure, especially with a cane. She had like a giant tooth. Now, I should point out, though, this is basically the actor who plays this is his second film appearance, David Warner, and a much better character than that useless character he played in the last film, who smoked for some reason. Now, those of you curious, though, do they ever smoke in any of the series for Star Trek? Do they smoke in any of the live-action TV series or any films before and after Final Frontier? The answer is no. Nope. Nobody ever smoked. David Warner was by far the only actor to actually smoke in a Star Trek film. And this film is under makeup, which, okay. And then we have his chief of staff, General Chang, who's played by the awesome Christopher Plummer. And he plays he plays a different Klingon. He's bald, even though he's got a small ponytail in the back. And he's got a nailed-on eye patch. The eye patch is nothing unusual for Klingons to have because they're basically fierce warriors. But a bald Klingon, that was something original for this film. As far as I know, they never did this again in any of the other series where they had Klingons being bald. We also have the character Asa Bohr shows up in here. And after this, she's referenced one time after this. They mention her fate. Yeah, so we have the dinner. Oh yeah, and also I should point out though, the view screen has slightly been changed for this film. Apparently the view screen has got an actual military clock on it, which I'm like, why would the view screen need a clock? Yeah, anytime I watch this film, I'm sure, I don't know if anybody's ever pointed this out when it comes to reviewing this film. Why in the world does the view screen have a freaking clock? Now I get though the view screen basically would have like recorded footage. That's perfectly normal. I have no problem with that. But why is there a clock in the view screen? Seriously, there's really no reason for this at all. It's never explained in story why this clock is here, but yeah. Give what you will. And we see a Klingon ship, and of course Kirk has the interesting line of, "Wow, never been this close before." That actually is kind of true. He's never been this close. He's never had the ship be this close to a Klingon bird of prey. Quite interesting that they've never done this before. Yeah, quite interesting. Yep. Everyone's brought on board. Introductions are made. And they say brief tour. They don't show a tour. They cut straight to dinner. And it looks like they're serving spaghetti. Okay, and of course it's Shakespeare quoting the film, and apparently there's some indirect quoting to Adolf Hitler for some reason, and of course someone goes bad, and of course everyone goes back, and then like everyone's like tired because they're all drunk, and yeah, of course I love the funny line Chekhov says where it's like Shatner, Kirk says to Sulu, "Hear a radiation surge? Like hear like a noise? Only the sound in my head." He's like, "I agree with you because we're all drunk from drinking Romulan ale, a drink that's actually illegal." Oh, before I continue with the plot, there is a new character pops in this film. This is her only film appearance, but she just appeared in one novel after this. Valeris, a woman who's Spock's apprentice. And someone who sponsors the Academy. I can kind of believe he actually did this. And they do a lot of development of his relation with Valeris, basically. Sort of a teacher-student relationship, which is perfectly fine. And there is a story involving the actress who played Valeris that I heard this at the brief. I have no idea if this story is true. Where the actress who plays Valeris decided to do a photo shoot of her wearing only her ears on the bridge of the Enterprise, and she took these pictures making her in the nude, wearing the Vulcan ears. Apparently, Nimoy found out about it, got upset, and he destroyed the photographs. Yeah, I have no idea if this story is true or not, but damn. Valeris is played by Kim Cattrall. This is probably by far the only time I've actually seen it. She's known for being Sex and the City, but if you want to know how old this actress is right now, she's 62. When she premiered this was 1991, so basically she was roughly, like, I'd say about 35. Yeah, she looks great for 35 in this film, and though she looks a little bit younger, but damn, she's smoking hot. Yep. Yeah. So, I've heard there's also another story involving Valeris. Now, originally this character was supposed to be Saavik returning, and Kirstie Alley was going to reprise the role. There was two reasons why she turned it down. One, the pay was actually less than what she got paid for in Wrath of Khan. Two, the plot twist involving her, and three, it was going to be a minor, and of course that was also possible to be a minor role, and having her encountering Saavik. I have heard these two have met in the novels, but these two have never met in live action. Though, in case you're wondering, though, I have no idea why Kirstie Alley reprised the role for Search for Spock and Voyage Home, based on Robert Curtis. Yeah, I don't know what the reason was. It was probably due to scheduling conflicts or something else. I have no idea. I've never heard an official reason why she was replaced. Yeah. So yeah, we had the attack on the ship, and I heard this was also done via like wire effects. The effect is very good. The assassination of Gorkon. We have these two Starfleet crew members. We don't really identify who these people are. They're basically really minor characters in the film. They shoot wearing... Now the phases they use, you're thinking, man, the phases look so weird in this film. They look so different in the next generation. Because it's the same design they use from that... It's basically the Type 2 phaser they actually used from the original series. One where it's a slightly bigger gun. And they've occasionally used these guns in films, so it's nothing really unnatural. And in the case of the spacesuits, the EVA suits, this is by far, I can think of, the first time since Motion Picture we've actually seen EVA suits in the films. Now, after this, they would use EVA suits in, like, roughly one other film after this, of the original 10, and that was it. They did use it in the first two Star Trek reboot films. Yeah, in the 2009 Into Darkness, they used EVA suits there. And maybe one or two other films, but that's pretty much it when it comes to that. Of course, we have the after the assassination, of course, Kirk gets arrested. And then we have the ambassador show for this scene. He shows up at the end. We see the Romulan ambassador first of two times the whole film we see him. We see Sarek. First of two times the whole film he's seen. We see a new president. Now, I've not heard exactly why the president was replaced for. Now, those of you curious about the actor who plays him, this is the actor who plays Red from That 70s Show. I'm not kidding. This is seriously him, the guy who plays the father of Topher Grace's character from That 70s Show. He's in this film. It's only one of two films I've seen him in. The other film was the original RoboCop, where he was the main villain of the film. Before somebody got killed on RoboCop at the end of the film. I know it's spoiling the film, but the film has been out for over 30 years. It's out for 32 years as of 2 years ago. Yep. Let's see, what else? Yeah. The president himself, he's also another character, which after this scene, he pops up roughly two more times. One, a quick cameo, and then toward the end of the film. They also have a scene that, for some reason, is cut out from the DVD cut for some reason. Yeah, we have Colonel North. Yes, I'm not sure why they cut out his moments. I cut him out the DVD cut for some reason, because the VHS cut has him there. Then for some reason I watched DVD cut okay, where in the world is... Oh, the actor who plays Colonel North is the actor who plays Odo from Deep Space Nine. Yep, in Yeah, he's actually another actor from the other shows appeared in this for this film. hmm Yeah, so he pops up for this scene, and it's not seen again until toward the end of the film. Yep, and well, we arrest stuff like that. Then we have the first of two times in Star Trek we have a Starfleet captain put on trial in a Klingon court. Those of you curious though, did this happen another time in Star Trek? Yes, in season 2 of Enterprise, an episode called Judgment. Though they don't really explain how the heck he even got there. And of course, they do feature Roy Pente briefly in the episode toward the very end. In this film, they actually do show Roy Pente, and man, it's an ice wasteland. This place. They introduced a character named Marta in the film, beautiful woman who currently is in her 60s now. If you're curious about her and why you don't see her very much in movies, she's a model. That is simply just, but she's a freaking model. And she's a shapeshifter. Basically making her, I think this is technically the second or third shapeshifter in the history of Star Trek. Before Deep Space Nine with Odo. Yeah, and of course they break out of prison, and the Enterprise is basically sneaking across the Klingon border just to rescue them. Even though they're ordered not to. And Sulu basically chimes in basically for assistance. And they get away, and they reveal like a whole thing of who's behind all this. And of course they have the mind meld, a forced mind meld. This is of course after they reveal about the whole thing about Valeris being a traitor. Yeah, apparently this whole conspiracy known as the Gorka conspiracy. Which, aside from Valeris, you would not believe who was part of this thing. Cartwright, Chang, Gorkan's chief of staff, and the Romulan ambassador. Yes. And when they actually reveal that she was behind she also killed the assassins who killed Gorkan. As for why, it's probably due to type of loose end. That's probably the reason why. They kill him off screen in the most awkward way possible. Stun up close. I'm like, okay, that technically wouldn't kill somebody at all. They, of course, search the ship from bow to stern, finding the gun, and, of course, the boot. Yeah, they try to look for the suits. And here's the thing. Scotty is the one who finds the suits in a ventilation cover. Like, and he finds this in the officer's lounge. Another time appears, and I forgot to mention it, pops up here as well. Yeah, he's simply just sitting there drinking, I think, coffee, or it's not scotch, because scotch usually is different glass, but I highly doubt he needs to be drunk for basically this, because Scotty, a lot of the time, we usually get drunk sometimes, but Dr. McCoy gets drunk a lot more than he does. And he's a doctor. Yeah, and he just randomly finds him, and just, yeah, and he finds like, oh yeah, we have these suits with Klingon blood in them. And, yeah, I love the investigation stuff they do in here, which, yeah, it's basically Star Trek CSI, which Spock, well, being the scientist that he is, and of course assuming command of the Enterprise, yeah, makes perfect sense. He would basically examine all the evidence. They find all the evidence they need, and of course they team up with the Excelsior. They meet up at Kittimer, which is a planet near the Klingon-Romulan border. They do mention that this planet does pop up in the Star Trek Destiny series. The planet itself is decimated by the Borg. Yeah, and all the population is wiped out. Of course, everyone welcome to Camp Kittimer, and of course we have Colonel North disguised as a Klingon. Though for some reason even they cut this out for some reason. Oh, I almost forgot to mention who's the lawyer for Kirk and McCoy for their trial? It's Worf. You're thinking, Worf? You mean the guy who's from Next Generation? And he looks, and he's the same actor? It's Worf's grandfather. Yep, it's his grandfather. Yeah, his son's name is Moog, and it was revealed in a book. I think it was one of the Lost Era books that's when Worf was born. They mentioned his name, and of course, Moog named his son after his father. Yep. Yeah, he pops up toward the end of the film. Though apparently he's a terrible lawyer. Also, for some reason, the Klingons are allowed access to Kirk's personal log. Last time I checked, that is not valid evidence. Though this is Klingon basically justice. So, and as for how they got an excerpt from his log, it's revealed that Valeris gave him that somehow. And also, okay, when they show Valeris entering Kirk's quarters, apparently Kirk just dropped this duffel bag at the door, which I'm like, why in the world would he bother to do that? Yeah, and it's a duffel bag. Okay, yeah. Now, this is nothing unusual for Star Trek to do when they have people come on board and they bring bags like this. It's basically a standard procedure, though he was not going to be on the ship very long anyways. And this is also the first time you see his quarters in the ship. Don't see much of it, surprisingly, though it does appear a lot in Wrath of Khan. And aside from this one, the quarters himself only appear for like 2 scenes, and that's it. We also see Spock briefly in his black robe in the film as well. Yeah, and of course they have Excelsior and Enterprise go to Kinnemer, and then they also run into figure out who actually shot up the. It's revealed in the film that the ship was shot. It was assumed was the Enterprise, and the computer was basically altered to reveal that they had fired. Yeah, so Spock and Scotty did an inspection, and they had the ship not fire at all, despite the fact that computer said it did. Nope, it was altered. Yeah, they physically examined every single torpedo, and thank God they showed us on screen because that would a waste of time to do. I heard even the adaptation didn't have this at all. The comic one. I don't remember if the novel did as well. It's been a while since I read it. Yeah, and of course they get to Kinnemer, and they had this very weird effect when they had the Klingon ship. Yeah, it's shown in the film that the ship can fire while cloaked, and this is the only ship they built. Okay, the effect when they show the ship firing cloak, it's a very odd effect. It kind of looks like the Klingon ship was basically put over like a dark tinted screen and shown fire in the dark. They would have used this in the 10th film. I will talk about that when I talk about Nemesis. Yeah, and of course, they had this sort of fire thing, and of course, the Enterprise A, man, this thing gets heavy damage. The bridge gets damaged. There's a hole in the hole, which is near the officer's lounge for some reason. I'm like, okay. Yeah, and apparently, Chang just issues the firing order just by pointing for some reason, just fire here, fire here, fire here. It's like, okay. And they fire the Excelsior. So Excelsior, from the look of it, looks like this one didn't receive that much damage. And eventually they destroyed the ship. Though for some reason they would use the stock footage. They would use the footage of this in the next film of a Klingon ship being destroyed. Yeah. They get down to the planet, prevent the assassination. So this time they're going to assassinate the president for some reason. And yeah, and of course Scotty's the one who shoots the assassin. And it's going to be General North, but they cut this out DVD cut for some reason. Yeah, and Worf's like, this is not Klingon blood, because it's red. Because Klingon blood is purple. Yeah, and of course, be General West. And reveal why, because people were afraid of change. Okay? And yeah, of course, they coil lines on single countries, like restoring my father's face, stuff like that. And of course, as a Bohr should point out, though, she was pointed as basically in Chancellor Crowder's place. She has not remained Chancellor for very long. No, she remains Chancellor for maybe 10 years until she's assassinated. And she is by far the first and only Klingon woman who ever assumed the position of High Chancellor. No Klingon woman has ever assumed this ever since then. Yeah, they've gone through a few different ones over the course of the years. They did have one really long one. Yeah, the one who replaced her was actually the longest one. The one who popped up in a couple episodes of Next Generation before he died might be a poisoning of all things. Though at least Azabor was at least assassinated. Yeah. Though they don't explicitly describe what the assassination was, but that's basically what happened to her. Yep. And then of course, because Cartwright got arrested, okay, so they get back on ship, it was like, let's celebrate, it's like pat in the back. And of course, I should point out though, also during the course of the film, Starfleet is screaming at the Enterprise during the space dock. Why? No idea why. They don't specifically explain the reason why. It's like, oh, return to space dock, return to space dock, return to space dock. I mean, come on. Could you at least give a reason why? And then the film like, okay, Like, we're returning the space dock to be decommissioned. Yeah, the ship does decommission. And there is a reason revealed in one of the novels. Yeah, the reason why it was decommissioned because new CNC, a guy who's a complete jerk and a follower of Cartwright, the guy later got removed from being CNC anyways. Yeah, because he kept doing illegal things. He apparently decommissioned the Enterprise for basically daring to arrest his mentor. And apparently, as part of the Gorka conspiracy, and he had the ship later destroyed in a battle. It was at a part of a fleet, which Kirk was there somehow able to retain command of, and the ship was destroyed. And that was last seen of the Enterprise A. Next film, they introduced the brand spanking new Enterprise B, a ship that didn't do very much at all. Had a few commanders, but that's pretty much it. Yep. And for a lot of the people who appear in this film, like, I would say, like, just about every single one now, as promotion for this film, Nimoy did appear for a couple episodes on Next Generation for the two-part unification. They do reference the events of this film in that episode, but this is technically his last time he appeared in Star Trek until he appeared in 2009 reboot film. Yeah, he would not appear in Star Trek for 18 years. Yes. Scotty, of course, showed up in the next film along with Kirk and Chekhov. Everybody else, this was their last appearance. Now, I should point out, though, in between, like, Voyage Home and Final Frontier, Dr. McCoy did appear on Next Generation in the pilot episode, playing an older version of his character, who's 150 years old. Yep. Scotty, of course, will also appear on the show in one of my favorite episodes of the series, Relics. As for everybody else, well, what happened to them after? There's a novel that's like our last run-up. Let's watch them. Like, what happened to the rest of them? Okay, after this mission, oh yeah, and apparently Valeris is revealed in the Castle of Shadow. She was in the prison and she was released, and their identity. Now, what happened to the rest of the characters? Okay, Scotty was basically retired, and he disappeared thanks to John Nolan. Spock retired, became an ambassador. Uhura became the head of Starfleet Intelligence, which he still had even in the 23rd century. Sulu became Federation president. Chekhov became the CNC of Starfleet. And what did Dr. McCoy do? Become chief of Starfleet Medical. And he also the one initiated the whole thing of families being allowed on board starships. Yeah, that's actually his idea, by the way. Yeah. This overall was one fantastic film. I mean, there's a couple minor hiccups, basically, no explanation. I mean, there's no really plot holes, not really, like, where did this come from, and stuff like that. Yeah. But I like some of the other films. This film is actually, in my personal opinion, of the original 6 films, the second best one. Yes. I still think, here's how I rank the 6 films. Number 1, Wrath of Khan. Number 2, Undiscovered Country. Number 3, I actually give it to The Search for Spock. 4, I give it to Voyage Home. 5, I give it the Motion Picture. And Bomb Barrel, Final Frontier, which is also considered to be, in my opinion, the second worst film in the entire series. Yeah. So with next episode, we're on to the 4 Next Generation films. And of these 4 films, I saw 2 of them in theaters. You actually figure out what my thoughts on those 2. But next one is the first one, Generations, which is also the 7th Star Trek film. Yeah, I will talk about this next review, okay? But until you see you next review, bye.